Thanks for joining. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We are here to think differently about your data center. Today we have two expert speakers who have joined us to discuss that. Jeff Sawicki joins us from HPE, where he's an expert in the Nimble and Infosight product lines. Specifically, he's helped customers make the most of digital transformation by leveraging AI in the data center. He has over 15 years of experience and has worked with executives and technology leaders alike to align their business problems with technology solutions. We also have Hannah Coney joining us from ComportSecure, where she's helped customers make the move from traditional infrastructures to cloud solutions and seen the benefits. She's focused her career on technology solutions that help the ever-evolving expansion of data, both into the data center and into your world. With that, I'm going to hand over the reins to Jeff to discuss how to bring intelligent storage into your data center and change the paradigm. Jeff, take it away.
Perfect. Good afternoon, and appreciate the warm introduction. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. So again, my name is Jeff Sawicki. I'm a storage specialist and account manager for HPE. I've been on board for a little over 2 years now. I came from the Nimble acquisition. Prior to that, I was with a number of technology firms, manufacturers and resellers alike. I've sold everything from EMC, Hitachi, NetApp, Pure Storage, Nimble Storage, and countless other ones over the years. So lots of experience with storage vendors around the world. And today we're going to talk about thinking differently about your data center. And so the conversation at HPE is, we call it crawl, walk, run. We've got different phases of a product called Infosight, which is essentially our cloud-based predictive analytics tool. It's powered by AI and machine learning, and it's been set up in various phases on HPE product lines, and we're going to talk about that today. And so just a quick overview, and these are my only 2 slides on hardware, so I promise we won't go too deep into it, but just a quick kind of snapshot of where HPE is today from a portfolio standpoint. Our 2 main product lines in the storage industry, especially for block storage, are Nimble and 3PAR. 3PAR is essentially our more flexible solution, scale out to 8 nodes, millions of IOPS, really higher end enterprise type of solution. Nimble, of course, is where I came from via the acquisition. Nimble's also an enterprise ready product line with a combination of flash and spinning disk and hybrid arrays and all flash arrays as well. We've also got things like MSA and Store Virtual for more affordable type of storage solutions, as well as SimpliVity for hyper-converged, things like branch offices, VDIs, things like that, where it's kind of an all-in-one appliance and it just makes your life a little bit easier. We've also got products for file and object storage. One of our key products is our Apollo line, where we partner up with companies like Cumulo and Scality for file and object. Essentially, we've got a pretty flexible product line here at HPE. There's not really a use case that we can't fit on one of our storage products. So that's really it from our portfolio standpoint, but wanted to kind of give everyone a quick snapshot of where HPE is today. And what I wanted to talk about before we jump into things is kind of give you guys a brief history of where HPE has been and where the market has been and where we're going. And so, when Flash came to the market around 2008, there was about a 3-4 year gap where you had this explosion of organizations around the world. You had Pure Storage, Nimble Storage, Extreme.io, Tintri, TGIL, Commonario. The list goes on and on and on. And over the years, either companies have dissolved, they kind of didn't make the race, they were gobbled up, they were bought out by other organizations, or they're still standalone vendors trying to make it in the industry here. But initially, when Flash came to the market, it was really based around performance. It was around, Flash wasn't really that dense at that time. Flash was very expensive. You really saw an uptick in more higher end organizations that really needed that higher end performance. But as Flash became a little bit denser, it became a little bit more economical. As supply chains started to keep up, it started to become a little bit more economical. And that was around between, let's say, 2013 to around 2017. After that, Flash just kind of became the new normal. Basically, there shouldn't be a vendor out there in the world that doesn't sell anything with some level of Flash in it. Flash has gotten to the point where it's become, the cost per gigabyte has actually gotten lower than spinning disk. There's no real reason not to have some level of Flash in almost every type of storage array in the world at this point. And so the conversation we're going to have today is around something called crawl, walk, run. So in HPE world, what we've done is we've taken this Infosight product line, which is our AI and analytics tool, and we've extended it from originally Nimble, which is where it came from via the acquisition, and we've extended it over to 3PAR, which is our other tier 1 storage product, as well as servers. And that is extremely unique in the marketplace. And that's the first part of my presentation here, is I want to talk to you guys about how we differentiate ourselves rather than the actual product itself just yet, right? Because one of the problems we have in this industry is that everyone claims they have AI, everyone claims they have analytics, everyone claims they have machine learning. So we call it the "we do it too" movement. Obviously, me too was already taken, but we call it "we do it too." And the reason for that is pretty much everyone claims that they have it. So how do you differentiate your product? How do you prove it rather than just say that, yeah, we've got AI, we've got analytics? It's almost like a checkbox in the industry, right? And so I'm not picking on EMC, but about a month ago, I was on their website, and right on the front of their website, it claimed that they had all-inclusive software pricing for their storage, right? And this is pretty common across the industry. Pure Storage does it, Nimble Storage does it. There are many other vendors that claim they have all-inclusive software licensing. And I got a little bit of a chuckle because this is kind of in line with the "we do it too" movement, right? If you read right under all-inclusive software on the right-hand side, everything you need to store, manage, and protect data. And then all of a sudden, when you dig a little bit deeper, if you look at the very bottom there, optional software data protection suite. So we got a little chuckle in the room stating that, it's all-inclusive base software, if you read at the top left-hand corner there, but there's all this optional software on top of it. So we all kind of get a little bit of chuckle because it's, it's not, I wouldn't say deceptive, because they do have all-inclusive base software, but it's almost like, hey, they're saying they do it too, just to kind of be part of the industry there, right? And it's the same thing for analytics. It's, predictive analytics. It's the same thing. They claim that they have it, but when you kind of dig a little bit deeper, it's like, well, they claim they have it, but do you really? And again, not to pick on EMC, because it's across the board, right? You look at Cisco, you look at IBM, you look at even non-storage vendors. Everyone is claiming that they have AI and analytics, pure Cloud IQ via EMC, right? But when you take a look at Infosight, which is what we're going to talk about today, you realize there's huge differentiators between us and anyone else out in the marketplace, right? And the first differentiator, and this is the one I kind of harp on immediately when I speak to customers about this type of product line, which, by the way, and I'm going to say this 3 or 4 times, Infosight is completely free, and it comes with every HPE storage product. But the first differentiator is that HPE, via the Nimble acquisition, is the only storage vendor to completely automate level 1 and level 2 support through Infosight. Does not exist. What that means is we do not have the headcount. So what we did is we took level 1 and level 2 support, completely automated, and jumped you directly to tier 3 support. And for anyone who's been in the industry for 10 plus years, this should look somewhat familiar to you, right? You have a problem, you call into level 1 support, you respond to the questionnaire, you send up your logs, you're calling into level 2, you're calling up your partner to escalate it. It's kind of a lengthy process. And it's across the industry. This has been pretty common for the last 20, 30 years, right? So when you're talking about automation, AI, analytics, and whether or not it's actually doing anything, well, we think it does if we're able to automate that level 1 and level 2 support, right? And the other piece of it is that we like to tout is that even though we've automated level 1 and level 2 support, directly to tier 3 support in Nimble HPE world takes less than a minute hold time. So the point of this is it does not impact your support experience. In fact, it improves it. Pre-acquisition on the Nimble side, what we did is, and this looks a little bit like a marketing slide, but the 2 things that I'd like you guys to note is that 9 out of 10 times, 93% of our cases are opened automatically. So when we talk about automating that level 1 and level 2 support, that's kind of how we get there. We still identify the smaller problems. We're just opening the tickets for you. And then 86% of the time, we're providing a solution automatically. So we're closing that ticket. We're saying, hey, here's a small problem. Here's the solution. We're going to close your ticket. Have a great day. Go out and remediate it, or we'll remediate it for you without any impact to your business. The other piece to note is that pre-acquisition, this was about 2 years ago, Nimble had the absolute highest NPS score in the industry. For anyone who's not familiar with NPS, it stands for Net Promoter Score. It's kind of like a would you buy it again? Would you recommend it to family and friends type of rating. Every technology company you work with today has an NPS score. Nimble are the absolute highest. So extremely high rated support, extreme automation, and complete automation of level 1 and level 2 support. The other piece to note is I gave you that quick history of Flash. Flash came to the market around 2008. Companies started popping up around 2008 to 2012. Nimble led the pack in terms of customer acquisitions. So this slide, we try to keep it a little bit fair. For any company that reports their customer numbers, we put it on this slide here. So Extreme.io, you might recognize as the EMC acquisition. Pure Storage has about 5,800 to 6,000 customers today. Nimble Storage has about 14 to 15,000 customers today. So about 3 times as many as anyone else out in the marketplace. The two things to note in regards to this slide is that we're pulling in more data than anyone else because we have more customers, right? So we're able to pull in more data from more than 3 times as many customers as most vendors out there. And the other piece to note is that other companies like Pure, and I only pick on them because I worked for them, but like Pure, they've got over 250 level 1 and level 2 support engineers with a third of the amount of customers as us. So when we start talking about AI and analytics, that's the framework that I want you to think about is that, hey, why do they have so many more level 1 and level 2 support engineers when it's been completely automated on the Nimble side when they both claim to have AI and analytics? Doesn't make much sense. Other pieces to kind of just prove it out to you is that if you look at our caseloads, these are manual cases created, so ignore the automated ones for just a second. Our manual cases that were created have barely increased since we started shipping arrays, despite the fact that our arrays and our customer counts drastically increased. And this is a little bit of an older slide. This ended in 2018. But you can see that the uptick in manual cases, fairly minimal. And again, that comes from our automation. The other component to it was last year, we extended Infosight to 3PAR. So if you kind of didn't believe it, well, it's on Nimble, it's a little bit biased, right? What we did was we took a version of Infosight, and that's that walk phase of it, crawl, walk, run, and we extended it to 3PAR. And 3PAR, for anyone who might not be familiar, has been around since 2002, believe it or not. It was acquired by HPE in 2010. 3PAR has over 81,000 systems sold. And we had all of this information that we were doing some stuff with it, but not with everything, because we really didn't have an AI or analytics engine behind it. So again, this is a little bit older. This is as of December of last year. But what we did was once Infosight was implemented in just that kind of phase 1 approach, we had a 20% reduction in our level 2 support cases, over 34,000 cases automated, and 2,000 proactive interventions. Proactive interventions are us going out and saying, hey, we need to, you've got a problem, we see it before even you do, let's give you a resolution, or let's open a ticket to resolve it. And so I thought this was kind of interesting. There's something called the Perrito Principle. For anyone who might not be familiar with the Perrito Principle, it's essentially across a number of different businesses, whether it's economics, technology, it's kind of across the board in a lot of industries. And what it basically states is that 80% of your issues only account for 20% of your pain, right? The majority of your issues are easy, right? And they're simple and common, and they're easy to predict and automate. And pretty much every vendor in the industry can solve the simple and common problems, right? But 20% of the issues, the more complex and unique ones, account for 80% of your pain, right? A small number of issues are just so painful to resolve. And that's where an AI recommendation comes into play, right? Our goal is to solve your pain. So part of the reason why we decided to automate our level 1 and level 2 support was, yeah, it's easier on us, of course, but the idea is to get you directly to a tier 3 support personnel. And that type of support personnel has 10 plus years of IT experience with other products in your data set, other products in your environment, things like Cisco, things like Brocade, Aruba, networking, other storage vendors, because we realize that customers have unique and diverse environments. So when we hire support personnel, we want them to have experience with other product sets. And so we're kind of at the last phase here of just proving it out and the concept behind it. And so I want to give you guys just 2 examples before we get to the meat and potatoes of it. Infosight's designed to be like a self-driving car. I mentioned earlier we're pulling in more data from more customers than anyone else out in the industry. But a self-driving car is completely automated, right? We're not there yet, right? Tesla and Google are out in the marketplace trying to get to that self-driving car mentality. But for anyone who owns a Tesla, you know that it's a little bit combination of both, right? It can do some self-driving, but you really got to keep your hands on the wheel at this point, right? But the goal is to be an autonomous infrastructure. It's supposed to be self-driving, self-healing, self-optimizing, right? Are we there today? Absolutely not, right? There's still a lot of manual work that needs to be done within any infrastructure and organization, right? You still have to open up your more complex and unique tickets. It's not going out and resolving problems entirely for you, nor would you want it to, right? You wouldn't want it to go and make changes without you knowing. But this is the kind of vision for HPE, utilizing AI for the data center. And the other analogy, and I promise this is my last one, is that, we talk about, if you're driving down the road and you've got Google Maps open and there's a problem with Google Maps, right? This loading screen is intentional here, right? Where does the problem lie? Well, if it's just you start seeing this loading screen, you could say that maybe it's the phone, maybe it's the application, maybe it's the connection to the carrier to the satellite to, to Google, whatever the case may be. The point is, you don't really know where the problem lies as you're just looking at your smartphone, right? And we call that problem the AppData Gap. And what we find is that when customers call into our support, more than half the time customers call us, it's for a non-storage related issue because they don't really know where the problem lies, right? And so the problem can lie in the storage level, it can lie in your networking and your compute, a number of different issues. But more than half the time people call us, it's for a non-storage related issue. And so it can be a number of different issues that affect the AppData Gap there. But mainly we find them somewhere between the application all the way down to the storage level. So how do we solve those problems? And this is kind of where, again, it's a unique differentiator of HPE, is that our goal is to solve problems throughout the stack as opposed to the individual point product. Everyone's good at their own product, right? It doesn't matter what industry you worked in. I worked in cybersecurity for a little while. Everyone's good at managing their own firewalls. Everyone's good at managing their own antivirus, right? But you needed a SIEM, a security information and event management tool, to kind of bridge the gap between everything, especially if it's a multi-vendor environment, right? We understand customers have, storage from EMC, from Hitachi, from NetApp, from Pure, from Nimble, it doesn't matter, in line with other vendors, as well as different types of networking, different types of compute, so on and so forth. So how do we solve problems throughout the stack when customers are calling us more than half the time with non-storage related issues, right? And so the way that we're doing that is with Infosight. And what we're doing is we're pulling in from 10 to 30 million points of telemetry data per day. In fact, we've got the largest repository of storage-centric analytic data in history. If you go on Vertica's website, we've got the largest instance of Vertica in the world, right behind Facebook. And Facebook obviously is in storage-centric analytic data. And Infosight's really comprised of three components. Those three components are cross-stack telemetry, essentially pulling information from throughout the stack as opposed to the individual point product, global learning, which we'll talk about in just a second, which leads to cloud-based predictive analytics. And so global learning is almost like taking a customer thumbprint, right? We have visibility, and we're one of the only vendors in the industry to have visibility from throughout the stack as opposed to our own point product. It allows us to create a customer thumbprint. What is your compute? Is it a Dell server? Is it an HP server? What is your networking? Is it at Cisco, Brocade, Aruba, so on and so forth? What kind of VMware environment do you have? What kind of versions of SQL, of Oracle? How are they reacting? What we're able to do is take customer thumbprints to client-specific hardware and software IDs. And those thumbprints help to inoculate other customers when problems occur. So the way that I kind of equate this is, if you look at Microsoft's strategy, right? Microsoft will typically know about Windows problems weeks in advance, but they don't know who's affected by them, which is why they have that kind of Microsoft Patch Tuesday mentality, right? Once a month on that Tuesday, they'll go out, they'll shoot out all the updates, and they'll inoculate all of their customers. Well, that's not really real-time protection. If you look at antivirus companies around the world, antivirus companies basically state, hey, listen, we've got antiviruses looking at stuff coming in from throughout the world. When a suspicious file comes in Eastern Russia, and then it pops up in New York City, even though we might not know what it is yet, we might not have the DAT file, What we can do is we can make a cross correlation between the two. We can say this is suspicious because we've seen it on one side of the world. When a problem occurs, we can see it and then we can resolve it in real time because we have customer thumbprints leading up into Infosight there. So when a problem occurs with another customer environment on the same VMware version, same networking, same storage as yourself, we can say, hey, you might be affected by this issue as well, right? And so we're collecting and analyzing those sensors. So global learning is essentially designed to see it once and prevent it for all, and learning from our install base, learning from those customer thumbprints. So quick example of that is, if you look at, blacklist updates associated with known problems, hey, we can say that there's a version update that might affect you based on an upgrade path, and it might affect you based on your VMware version or your NIC card version on a switch, whatever the case may be. What we can do is we can say, hey, you might be susceptible to the same problem as another vendor, as another customer. Let's make sure that we block that out for you now. So we can gray out that upgrade button in real time so that you're not affected by a bad bug release, right? Not that HPE Nimble, of course, we would never issue a bad release, but of course, if a problem occurred, we could stop you from accidentally upgrading when another customer has already gone through some sort of issue, or if we found something. So the idea behind that is preemptive recommendations for your data centers, preventing issues before they occur, improving performance, optimizing available resources. So what we do when we talk about predictive analytics is we can do things like capacity analysis and recommendations. What's my capacity now? How much space have I used? When am I likely to run out of space, right? All of this is kind of common across the board, and you'll hear this from every vendor out there. What's unique about this is that we're taking in outside variables and we're going to make a projected range of when you're going to run out of space. So as long as a customer gives partners access to it, both partners and customers alike can say, hey, listen, I know I'm going to run out of space in 6 to 9 months, or 6 months, or in this exact date and time. Let's issue a request in purchasing for an expansion shelf now. Let's get ahead of the game. Customers love this, where they've got different budgeting cycles and they need to predict when they need to, add expansion shelves or add additional performance or buy another array, right? Let's get ahead of the game from a capacity standpoint. Let's also do it from a performance standpoint. How is my array coping with my workload today? Do I have enough CPU? Do I have enough cache if it's a hybrid array? What's causing latency? So on and so forth, right? So performance recommendations, capacity recommendations are pretty common across the board, but we're taking in a lot of outside variables to make better predictions. Now, here's where it gets interesting. For customers that have VMware environments, what we're able to do is diagnose VMware problems as a storage company. So let me say this again. I mentioned earlier, more than half the time customers call us up, 54% of the time, it's for a non-storage related issue. We have a deep visibility into VMware environments, and we're pulling down information directly from vCenter. So what we're able to do is diagnose VMware problems as a storage vendor. You can call us up if you have a VMware related issue, right? And you can do it with other applications as well. SQL, Oracle, Exchange, Hyper-V, Citrix. It's not limited to VMware, but VMware has a real tight integration. And through vCenter, we're able to see a lot of the other components that would sit between the application and the storage level. So we're able to solve problems like noisy neighbor VMs, inactive VMs. It's extremely common across the board. You're able to see your top performing VMs. Let's show you a little bit about what that looks like. When a latency spike occurs, this is typically what a customer would see. They see that there's a latency spike and they're going out to their individual point products to figure out where that occurred. Some vendors have visibility into the host, the networking, and the storage, and this is all they see. Hey, we can see that there's a latency spike and we can identify that it goes down to a specific level, right? In fact, this is actually uncommon, but vendors are working towards this type of methodology. But with our type of granularity and our integration with VMware, we're able to see down to the individual data store, see exactly what type of performance it's happening. We can see the average latency. We can say, hey, this is the exact data store that's causing an issue. Let's prevent the problem before it occurs. Well, let's prevent a problem, or if the problem is occurring at the moment, let's go in and apply QoS or whatever type of fix we would need to, right? And so this is a little bit of an older shot. This is from the Nimble days here, but We can correlate the performance data from VMware all the way down to Nimble and on 3PAR. And now with servers, we'll talk about that in a few minutes here. Right? But we can see what contributes to the latency. And if you notice on the left-hand side, it's laid out just like your vCenter. That's the type of information that we're pulling down. There's no manual work created. Infosight's just going to pull that data automatically. Keep in mind that all of our appliances and that we don't have access to your individual data itself. They're all, and I got yelled at in a meeting for one time for saying this, but we're all FIPS certified appliances. FIPS 140-2, which is basically a government sanctioned appliance, hardened appliance that we can't see your actual data itself, and everything is encrypted across the board. So we can't see your actual data, but we can see what's going on with your different types of applications. Other examples of what that looks like is, and if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see it's top VMs by data store. You can see what type of latency, what type of performance. Everything is drillable. You can see what type of I/O. You can see what types of inactive VMs you've got. So in this specific case, we can see that there's an AF7000 that was high latency impacting users. And we can see that, hey, the total IOPS was 1.5 in 24 hours. And our recommendation based on that was to split the load between two AF7000s. All this really means is we saw a problem, we were able to identify it, and we were able to provide a resolution for it so that you don't need to go out and kind of search for where the problem is or use a third-party VMware tool. We're not specifically stating that we're trying to replace third-party VMware tools, but a lot of customers end up doing that. We have that type of granularity and visibility, and we're willing to take those types of support calls. Other examples on a SQL side, there was a suspended SQL query that was responsible for high IOPS. Here's what the performance looks like. All of these graphs are drillable. So you can drill down to the exact date and time, and you could say, here's where the problem occurred. Why did it occur? Oh, well, we ran this, this SQL query. Let's apply QoS to it, or let's provide some sort of remediation. All of this really comes down to one simple thing. It's endless firefighting, right? You're calling up tier 3 support rather than wasting your time with level 1 and level 2. Rather than a reactive approach, it's a more proactive approach, predicting, preventing problems before they occur. And it's calling vendors and calling your partners and saying, hey, I need to escalate tickets and so on and so forth to get me up to the right person who can solve a problem for you. So the idea is to pave the path towards an autonomous infrastructure. Phase 1 is kind of preventing problems. Phase 2 is kind of recommending and predicting problems. And phase 3 is an autonomous data center where it's a self-driving car that's self-driving, self-healing, self-optimizing type approach. All of this is great, right? It's on the Nimble side, it's on the 3PAR side. So our tier 1 storage has Infosight on it today. It's completely free of charge. But what's very unique is that all of a sudden back in January of this year, HPE extended Infosight to our server platform. This is extremely unique, and I've said this once or twice before already, I know, but it's extremely unique in the marketplace. HPE, depending on the year that you look, is number 1 to number 2 in the world for server footprint. If you're in the New York City region, I think we're number 1 for x86 servers. So a lot of customers have HPE servers today, but may not have the storage, and that's okay, right? And what we've done is we've extended that that crawl phase of Infosight, that phase 1 phase, to our server platform, completely free of charge. And I mentioned earlier, I'm going to say this 3 or 4 times, but if you're an HPE server customer today, Gen 8 or above, Infosight is completely free of charge for you, and you should absolutely take advantage of that. Infosight on servers today is designed to bridge the gap between servers and storage, right? So it's designed to integrate with something called OneView, which manages our infrastructure. It's designed to give you AI-based recommendations, cross-stack diagnostics, predictive analytics, in conjunction with OneView, which is our unified management platform. And what kind of data is collected today in our server footprint? We call it server flight recorder data. So we're pulling in 5 to 10 megabytes per server of data per day, different types of analytics, health, system configuration. I'll show you what that looks like in just a second there. But we've been collecting a lot of this data since 2012. We just haven't done a lot with it. Every vendor out there has all of this data. They're just not doing a lot with it. And so we've got something called heartbeat data that we're also collecting. Heartbeat data is just health checked every 10 minutes or so. Every vendor collects heartbeat data, but we're collecting it at a different level. and we're integrating it with an AI engine that's allowing us to do more predictive analytics on the server side. We've also integrated this, and again, all of this is free of charge, with something called ILO Amplifier. And ILO is just basically a firmware that sits on the server. Customers are now using Infosight as an inventory management tool for their Gen 8 or above servers. And they're able to basically identify all of their servers within a single pane of glass. They're able to identify, hey, where's my maintenance contract? What's going on with my server footprint? All of this leads towards Infosight for servers and what we've talked about so far, predictive analytics, global learning, and generally it leads to improved support. Again, Nimble had the highest rated support pre-acquisition in the storage industry. Now we've extended that same level of support over to the server platform. Here's what it kind of looks like in a lens view. Operational dashboards. I tell customers all the time that all of these dashboards are exportable. You can even say, hey, I want to export this once a week on this date and time. It's great to bring to management, right? If you're an IT director and your CIO is saying, hey, what's the health of my organization? You can export any of this stuff to a PDF or a CSV file, and you can say, here's the health of my organization. Here's where my servers lie. Here's what kind of power it's using. If anyone out there is responsible for power, you're able to identify how much power a server is pulling. It helps with things like predicting how much cooling you need in a data center. Here's what it kind of looks like from an issue summary page. Again, this is just on the server side. You can see issue details. You can see open tickets. Again, all of this is exportable and easy to work with. None of this stuff requires any deep, in-depth training. As I mentioned before, we do inventory management systems. You can see your warranties and support. This is usually a big pain point for customers. Is I'm not sure when my stuff expires. I'm not sure when I need to budget for a renewal. I'm not sure when I need to budget for an end-of-life product, right? All of this is now extremely visible. We're trying to be more candid with what customers can see and make your life a little bit easier. Here's what it looks like from a performance side. Here's what it looks like from a performance metric side. Again, same thing. Here's my servers. Here's the workload. Here's my memory usage. Here's my power consumption. I need additional RAM. Let's budget for that now. Let's get ahead of the game before things occur. And then finally, in my last component is I want to quickly talk about something called HPE Cloud Volumes, which works in conjunction with AWS and Azure, right? And utilizing ComportSecure, we can get a little bit deeper than that. So HPE Cloud Volumes takes Nimble and 3PAR and co-locates them to Amazon, to AWS, and Azure. So here's the problem, right? Customers are moving to AWS and Azure, and we get that, right? Customers are looking for a hybrid on-prem in the cloud type of approach, right? Or customers are moving entirely to the cloud, and for most customers, that's a debatable topic. But one of the biggest pain points of moving to the cloud with any of these vendors is you're stuck in that contract. You're stuck paying those egress and out fees, and those contracts lock you in. So I had a nonprofit I was working with last year. They had all their stuff in Amazon, and all of a sudden their Azure rep came in and said, hey, listen, I'm going to give you free compute in the cloud because you're a nonprofit. We really like you. And you've got Office 365, right? They weren't able to take that data from Amazon and migrate it over to Azure because they're locked into that contract. In fact, they're not even able to take that data and move it back to their own environment. So Nimble Cloud Volumes gives you all the benefits of Infosight, gives you all the benefits of better reliability, 6 nines availability, full level of encryption, AES 256 encryption at rest and in motion. But the biggest thing I would say, the biggest advantage there is you're not locked into that contract. The data sits on our arrays, but you still get your compute from Amazon or Azure in an operational expense. So it falls in line with your contract. Pay for what you use, pay as you go. This is how much capacity I need. This is how much performance in terms of IOPS I need, and you're off to the races. Pay a monthly subscription. Utilizing ComportSecure, we can go even a step farther. So ComportSecure can do HPE Cloud Volumes. ComportSecure can also host HPE storage in a third-party data center. And ComportSecure can even go, a little bit more from the white glove service, and they can say, hey, listen, we can manage your storage and we can manage that Amazon relationship. So I'll let Comport talk to this in just a second here, but if you're looking for a little bit more of a visual, right? Comport can take your data center, it can manage it for you, it can move your stuff up to your storage level, to Nimble Cloud Volumes, wherever that might sit, that can sit in a third-party data center, or we can co-locate it to Amazon or Azure. with a dark fiber, low latency connection. So it's that high performance connection you'd expect. And then if you want to migrate from one vendor to another, or you want your own data back in the future, guess what? You don't have to pay those egress and out fees. And that's my last slide there. I'm going to pass the ball over to Hannah.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Let me know if you can. There we go.
I think you've got
Welcome,
access
everyone.
there.
Okay, great. There we go. Okay, so thanks, great, Jeff. A great update, and thank you for speaking about HPE solutions and how they are changing and evolving to better service customers. As Lori mentioned, I've spent my career focusing on cloud infrastructure and how to do exactly what we're here to talk about today, which is to think differently. And I use think differently in more of the sense of not that what you're doing now is wrong, but it can be much more efficient, and we can help you make sure that you're getting from where you are today to where you want to be in a year, 3 years, or 5 years much more efficiently, so that you see true growth and you see the best ROI that you can with what you're using and what you're investing in. Today, I want to focus on how ComportSecure has helped HPE deliver these solutions that Jeff mentioned, and how we're prompting users, directors, CIOs, CFOs, and people like yourself to think differently about your IT landscape. Before I get into the how, though, let's review who exactly ComportSecure is for those of you who might not already know. Comport has made a natural evolution. ComportSecure was designed to keep up with and keep ahead of our customers' hybrid IT needs. We are not just another cloud service provider. I'm not here to preach to you today about how we want to take your hardware. I don't want you to go take your tapes out of Iron Mountain. I don't want you to go start a bonfire and sit in front of it with your friends and say, everything's in the cloud, we're good to go. That's not my goal. My goal is to help do exactly what Jeff mentioned, which is bridge that gap. Let's see how we can introduce the cloud technology and the hybrid cloud IT approach to better, whether it be your storage, your infrastructure, or your DR. So we're going to talk about all that today. ComportSecure, through this evolution, the important thing here that I want to point out is that for 30 years, we really focused so hard, and still do, to be that true technology partner for our customers, whether that be in the data center with HPE or in the cloud with HPE. Both of those places are important for us to focus our energy and be a true partner for our customers, and to provide excellence in both solutions and services there. So our priority has always been not only to deliver the highest degree of trusted solutions, but also the support to them after installation, so that you, the customer, are seeing the highest potential in that ROI, and that can be recognized. With being data center experts for over 30 years, you can see we've achieved many accolades to our services and solutions, but those wouldn't be possible if our customers didn't trust us to guide them and solve challenges and IT problems with them. So thank you to our customers. I want to now take it a step further this afternoon. I want to talk about all the great solutions that Jeff mentioned that HPE has for you. And I want to talk about how we're using those to bring you a true hybrid IT solution that is best suited for your needs. And your needs will be different than somebody else's, and that's okay, because nobody is at the same stage in this cloud roadmap. And some people haven't even looked at it because it's very overwhelming. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper on that today, and where those solutions can be applied. You see here the 4 core buckets that I call them of ComportSecure today. The first one, backup as a service, that everybody's familiar with in the cloud. We want to complete that 3-2-1 best practices rule, and we want to help you get your data offsite to a location out of your network, and that is truly going to be data sitting there ready for you to utilize and available for you when you need it. Second, disaster recovery as a service. Disaster recovery as a service is part of what we'll focus on here in a moment, as well as infrastructure as a service, in that these two go a little bit hand in hand. But disaster recovery as a service is a true customized solution when done correctly. Your RPO and RTO is going to be different than somebody else's, and we want to make sure that when you have to rely on those RPOs and RTOs to keep your organization up and running, that you can do that. So through proven, tested solutions that time and time again can be reliable for you, your organization, and your board of directors. And infrastructure as a service every now and then can be the best way to do that. But infrastructure as a service is also our way of helping you take data that is sitting on site, sitting in a DR site that you might rent or you might own, and it is our way of saying to you, the customer, let's look at how we can best optimize the solution to tailor your applications and to tailor your day-to-day business operations for your employees and for your customers to see the best results. That's the space in which we're going to talk the most about this afternoon. And then as well as the managed services that are available to add on to the infrastructure as a service that you can use with HPE hardware. Jeff touched a little bit on the support. That's a huge part of who we are as a cloud service provider. I can't stress enough how important it is to really understand in what places within your organization today are consuming resources that are not what they're designed for, because it's really easy to slip down that slope and put somebody in a position where you feel that you need them there. We have to have somebody watching for errors all day long, staring at the screen, or doing one specific item that they really weren't designed for, and that there's a lot of other options there to help make that automated, like Jeff said, to work towards a more efficient IT organization. So in applying those solutions that Jeff talked about in those 4 buckets that I just mentioned, I want to talk about 4 areas in which we start to get into really the application of the hybrid IT environment. What I hear from customers, what ComportSecure deals with, and how HPE comes in and helps us deliver solutions for customers that allows them to think differently and then act on those thoughts. And the first one is legacy DR sites are a slow death. This is a very, I'm not going to say controversial, because I think there's a mass agreement on it today, but the mass thoughts of the users today, they understand the use for the DR sites and they agree that it's not being used to the best way that it could be today, and they want to make a change, but they don't know how. Your legacy DR site is a large entity. It is most of the time not something that you can just turn off, flip the switch, and move over to a cloud solution. We recognize that. We recognize that your DR sites are what you depend on, and that your primary data centers are what you really truly invest your IT budgets into to get the most return on. So we want to help you make those more efficient by recognizing the places in which your resources are going to in those DR sites, to look at it and say, where can we make better use of those funds? Where can you put that HPE technology that you're using and love today? Where can we put that so that you get more out of it? And the first bullet point here is the location cost and lack of security, or cost of security if you're deploying a security team. The cost of a true DR site in a data center that is a tier 5 data center designed to protect data to the highest degree is not, I can guarantee you, if you're listening today, that it is not your niche. The organization that you are a part of, you were not sat there and designed or used to design a data center to protect data that is at the tier 5 data center level. Those data centers take people who are designed to do just that. Your data center might be secure and it might have redundancies in place, but the amount of resources that it takes to actually use and build and monitor and maintain a tier 5 data center is so immense. So if you look at the cost of that alone, your DR site is probably already steps behind where it could be. So again, I use think differently, not in the term that it's being done wrong now, but it could be better. So the cost of the data center and the cost of the security at that data center. Second, capital equipment and redundancies. The redundancies 2N+1 designed to maintain that data center security and confidence that if something was to happen, that data will not be sacrificed, it's a very large forgotten piece of the puzzle. because you mostly don't realize that you don't have that in place until something happens. There's a statistic here on the bottom of my slide that mentions that hardware failure is the #1 cause of data loss and or downtime. According to Dynamic Technologies, hardware failures cause 45% of total unplanned downtime, followed by loss of power, software failure, data corruption, security breaches, and accidental user error. So what does that really mean? That means that all of those items could be put into a controllable location, and we could reduce all of that with just the change in data center location. Remove your data center that requires you to monitor all of those pitfalls and put it in a Tier 5 data center where you still have control of the equipment, you still have options in place for redundancies, and now you're getting the added benefit of what is involved with a Tier 5 data center. The third bullet there, maintenance contracts. Maintenance contracts are critical, but they're not critical for you to manage. It's important to have them in place, but let HPE and ComportSecure experts, let us help you manage those contracts. Let us help you solve the problems that are covered with those contracts. Okay, our experts are here and they're available for you to monitor, to use the automation tools that Jeff mentioned, to look for those blippets on the radar that we can attack for you so that you don't have to spend your day putting out fires and you can get to that run phase a lot faster. And lastly, the manpower. As I've mentioned here multiple times, the manpower and the resources internally to maintain, respond, and mediate problems in the data center. If you have that unplanned downtime by a software failure, if you have it from hardware failure, and you now have to deploy the resources to handle that with a infrastructure as a service or a DR site in ComportSecure's data center, that all goes away. The second point that we hear a lot of, and these are all going to build, and it's, at the end I want to review exactly how we can help with all 4 of these, but the second one that builds on to the first one that we just mentioned is the ROI. And this is probably the biggest one, and I don't use it in the sense that it's the biggest one because that's the buzzword, that's what you hear when you're going to present to your board of directors, you're going to talk to your CIO or CFO, they want to know, what's the ROI? It's not that simple, because cloud solution brings ROI to your growing organization in a much different way than what's normally expected when you walk into those meetings. The cloud solutions with infrastructure as a service and DR as a service, they're not designed to save you buckets of money. You are going to be walking into a very controversial environment if that is the belief and that is the goal. Now, the goal to save money is a realistic goal. However, the goal to completely get rid of sections of your budget, that's not really realistic. And our goal is to say, look, you're spending this amount of money already. You're spending a little more because you have to do this on top of it. Let's take those resources that you're already using and let's find a better way to do it so that you're getting a greater ROI out of those dollars. The dollars might not change, but trust me, the benefits will. So if you're using dedicated hardware today in a data center that you're renting or that you own and are maintaining the building of, you can still use your dedicated hardware. And you can still trust that the HPE hardware with Infosight is going to function the same way you're using it today in our data center. But now, going back to that message that Jeff mentioned at the end of his presentation, you also have the ability to consume resources at a moment's notice in addition to the hardware that you have hosted in our data center. So now you have both an opportunity to use what you have invested in and build on that in a way that makes the most sense in an OpEx manner. And then third, achieving high demand storage and compute needs. So, archiving versus the high demand storage and compute needs. There's a very large difference here, and the cost associated with them changes dramatically as well. So drawing that line right now, it's probably a line in the sand for most, but drawing that line to say the data that we need and the data that we expect to have access to at a moment's notice is here. And the data that we expect to have available if we ever need it, which may not be ever, but we have to keep for legal purposes, whatever that reason may be, we're going to put that over here. And that's going to save us a lot of storage dollars, okay? We're going to use technology that's best for each of those, okay? So maybe you have data that, you know, S3 is a great place for that. It's a great parking garage for it, but you didn't expect to have to access it, and now all of a sudden you're seeing that, oh gosh, we're really restoring our data from the cloud a lot quicker and frequently than we thought we would have to. And that bill is going up and up and up and up from AWS or Azure. Well, we can refine those. We can say, hey, look, you're definitely restoring a lot more data than what you expected. So now let's tweak that. Let's put some more data here on your HPE storage, and let's have that readily available for you to restore from any point in time without any cost associated with it. And then after a longer point in time, we can archive that automatically for you to an S3 bucket. So then the last point here in red is really what I want to drive home with Infosight, is that you have the ability to consume Infosight in your dedicated hardware environment with ComportSecure, to use that to your advantage to plan and go to board of directors meetings for growth planning or budgeting and saying, hey, here are the reports. I know our data is secure where it is. Here's what we expect to grow by. Here's how we're going to do it. Gone are the weeks of endless spreadsheets and making sure that you have somebody who's dedicated to keeping it updated and watching and monitoring. Now you have those reports available for you, and you're even going to be able to look at that and say, look, the recommendations are already made. Let's dig deeper into that. So then the third point, that is, it's my personal favorite. We can't use the cloud. We can't use the cloud because we have to have physical hardware. Well, my friends, I don't have a cloud that your hardware goes away from and your data goes to. So the good news is you can keep that hardware. As I mentioned previously, you can now, I want you to walk away from today thinking so differently about infrastructure as a service that you almost think about it as co-location as a service, because that's essentially really what it is. I am not taking your hardware and I'm not going to ship it off and never see it again and put your data in a cloud and then give you a password to get access to it. I'm going to put your hardware in our data center, give you the best security wrapped around that hardware, and then give you the ability to use our resources to be able to expand, be able to purchase more dedicated hardware for your use, or start to migrate some of those workloads to the cloud where it makes sense in a tier 5 data center. So the redundancy of that data is included in the data center, the geographic diversity that you now have by leveraging our data centers that you wouldn't have had access to otherwise is there, and Infosight and HPE solutions that are the best and highest degree that you will be able to find today are there to help you plan, handle workload management, and be able to monitor your equipment and your data and applications within the data center. So my real question when I hear we can't use the cloud for whether it be security reasons or the fear of not owning equipment or the fear of changing and not knowing what your cloud consumption cost will be is, can you afford not to use the cloud? Can you afford the estimated cost of downtime that will come with managing your own data centers or your own DR sites? Because that ranges anywhere from $926 per minute to $17,000 and $244 per minute. That is a large gap, but even at the end of it, I don't want any of my customers to throw thousands of dollars out the window if they have unplanned downtime. I want them to be able to call us and use our team that helps them get the best solution in place to get back up and running as quickly as possible. And lastly, how do you make a change for the better? You've heard Jeff speak about the HPE hardware and solutions that are available to you today to make that migration from crawl, walk, run. You've heard me talk about the ways in which ComportSecure services and data centers are available for you to use with the HPE hardware and solutions. But how do you make a change for the better? It's really hard to navigate when you probably have 15 projects at a minimum happening right now, and you have a upward battle at times, it might seem like, when it comes to the IT transformation. So the first part that I really truly recommend this for all customers, whether you are on board with cloud solutions or you're not, but put together a cost and effort versus a gain diagram. And look at where you're investing resources, both tangible and non-tangible resources internally. And what are you getting out of that compared to what the cost and effort would be to deploy a hybrid cloud environment and the gain from that? Really look at those and compare those closely, because what you're going to find 99% of the time is that the gain outweighs the cost for the hybrid cloud environment, and the cost does not increase to get the same result, but better. So not doing it wrong now, but being much, much more innovative and efficient to do better in the future. Second, DR testing. DR testing is it's a necessary evil for some, and some people have mastered the art of DR testing because they've been deployed the correct solutions, but it's something that is worth its weight in gold if you can time and time again predict what will happen in the event of a true disaster and be able to fall back onto those proven benchmarks that you've repeatedly carried out in your testing time and time again. Not only will it save your organization, but it might also save you in your role in your company. Having audit-ready reports and historical data points to point to. Third, managed service capabilities. Where are resources being used inefficiently? Where do you have people that weren't designed to be doing a job that they're doing today, that you'd like them to be doing something else that is a better use of both their time, both your time, and a better outcome for the company? And how can we help with that? Whether it's a couple hours a week to 40 hours a week, it's going to be different for everybody. But I can promise you that if you take a look, you probably have someone in your organization who is doing a job they're not designed for. And it's really a lot of hours that can be better used to help grow the company and make your IT department a stronger force. And then lastly, reporting and automated health checks. We've talked a lot today about lots of various ways to use the cloud, but something that we run into a lot that I think is important to point out is the fact that if you're not doing reporting and around health checks and doing those regularly, then with the rate at which IT changes happen, there's probably going to be something down the road that we'll stumble into while helping you that we could have attacked sooner, or you could have attacked sooner, to make your environment that much more ready for change. So if a health check is something that hasn't been done in a while in your environment, let HPE, let ComportSecure know, and we're happy to help walk through that process with you. One of my last slides here, continuing the how to make a change. This is a diagram that I'm sure you've seen 100 times, the path to modern IT, legacy, hybrid, future. These 3 steps are not easy. They're not fast. It's a chaotic state, and it maybe is only a segmented chaotic state. This is not to say it's your whole IT environment. Maybe it's very segmented to a small part of it. All the way to that dream state, that's a long journey. It's not something that most people are prepared to do in a quick amount of time. And if you are, well, then you probably are aware that that time is going to change. That timeline is going to be elongated, and what you thought would take 3 months now takes 12. So our goal is to help you to identify the legacy aspect of that. What's costing you the most money? What's siphoning the dollars out? What's causing you issues that is causing headaches with management? Where is it more difficult than it needs to be? What don't you have that you should have, like disaster recovery or data availability without cost associated with it? And then how do we get you to the future via a hybrid IT methodology? There's lots of ways to do it. I think we've pointed out many great ones for you today, and I think the fact that HPE has such a wide portfolio and ComportSecure has the methods to deliver that portfolio and support it is a true gift to you, the customer, and it gives you the ability to really tell us what it is that you need, or maybe what you don't know that you need, but you know you need to do something to make a change. That's where we can help. So lastly, my call to action to all of you is to think differently. Think about what you heard here today. If you want to talk more about it, if there was something that you thought was applicable to where you're at today and where you're trying to go, let us know. We want to hear from you what you need. We have the solutions to help you, but if you can't talk to us about where it is you're trying to get to, if you're not able to reach a hurdle or get over a hurdle and you just don't know what to do about it, let us know. we want to talk to you. We want to pair you up with customers who have had success with this and that we've worked with, to talk to them maybe about how they've done it. There's a lot of parallels in environments, and there's a lot to be learned. So let us know if you are ready to move to the cloud and you need to know what to do to make sure you're really ready to get there. We will help you with the assessments, and we'll help you get there. It's not a quick road, like I've said. It's not easy, but we can sure make it easier for you.
So thank you, Hannah and Jeff, for joining us. And I want to open this up to questions. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat box. In the meantime, there are some questions that I wanted to ask that came up during the webinar. I just want to make sure that we highlight these points. And one of them is to Jeff. So Infosight is free for service if we have an HPE server. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So Infosight was, oh, a little background noise there. Infosight was implemented for HPE servers in January. Infosight is completely free of charge, and I would recommend if you've got HPE servers, anything from Gen 8 or above, to look into installing Infosight. Reach out to myself or reach out to Comport. It's a fairly simple process in order to install it. So absolutely.
Okay, I'm just going to look in the chat window here, just see if there are any questions. Okay, there aren't any questions that I see at the moment. So I am actually going to ask one more, which is, what happens if your entire environment isn't ready for the cloud? How do you handle customers that are splitting the fence at this point? And I guess that question is to Hannah, because you've been focused so much on cloud.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Lori. And the answer that I help customers with, the answer that I use when helping customers with that problem is that you probably are and you just don't even know it, or you're set up to really migrate a small part of your environment to the cloud, and you're not familiar with the solutions that are out there to allow you to do it. So what I like to do is let's target that small piece of the environment that is ready to go to the cloud that you didn't know was ready. Let's look at that and let's say, okay, how do we make this better? And what's the end goal for you, the customer? And then from there, we will help deploy the best solutions to do that. It's the best way to get a feel of how to migrate to the cloud, and it's the best way to be able to understand what your options are, what's out there. And once you make the jump, it's a lot easier to get rolling from there. But that initial hurdle, that's a hard one. So, yep, good question.
Okay.
And I have a question.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I would like to know how the Comport services, the service offerings have been changing, I would say in the past 5 years from the original offerings into what the offerings are. I guess that's a question for Hannah.
Say that one more time. You broke up a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
How has Comport customer base services looked at IT in the past, and how have they been implementing as a service offerings for the better today?
So the second bullet point there that talked to us about customers, and that's exactly what I was conveying there, is that our customers have come from similar environments of the customers that are probably on the phone call today, and that's that they had data centers that they were leveraging for their primary workloads, or they had DR sites that they were using, and they were quickly, well, I don't want to say quickly, but they were running into issues over the past couple of years that really were consuming so much time and resources they couldn't be ignored. And as they tried to ignore them, they realized that they were falling behind the 8 ball. They were losing out time on productivity, they were losing resources, and the data was at risk. And when you get to the point where the data is at risk, that's where they decided to make a change. So the change from whether it was a tornado that went between your primary site and your DR site because they're only 15 miles away, or you had a virus attack and you didn't have backups that were outside your network, whether it was one of those solutions or a different one that caused data loss, that's when you feel the pain. And so our customers have migrated from their legacy IT environments to cloud hybrid IT environments because they've realized that they can't risk that data loss. So when you have those conversations and when we start to get down to it, the most important part of why we're all here today, which is how to avoid data loss and operate efficiently, they realize that that's what's needed to continue to keep doors open and growth happening within their organization. So they've consciously made the effort to get closer to that dream state that I showed on the previous slide.
Thanks.
Okay, well, with that, I don't see any more questions, so I think we're going to end it here. Again, thank you, Jeff and Hannah, for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out or go to Comport's website at comport.com. And thanks again for joining today.